Hello, good evening, and welcome to UPfront. Today, we actually look back, and of course, on Sunday, the 7th of January 2018, it will be exactly 1 year since President Akufo-Addo became President of the Republic of Ghana. Yes, 1 year already. And we'll be looking back at the tenure of the President in the first year with his chief spokesperson, the Minister for Information. That conversation will happen here on UPfront with other important issues that you need to know. And of course, every single thing the man knows. He's a brilliant guy. He recently got a PhD. So this is only fair to estimate that we have him on all of the important issues government is dealing with in our current session. After this break, I'll introduce him. Then we get to the crux of our conversation. You welcome back. My name is Raymond Aqua. We get UPfront on the president's tenure in the first year. What have you seen? What has happened? What is government dealing with? What's on the grounds? What does the year 2018 look like for you? And maybe for the man who is at the center of the entire government's communication. The Honorable Mustafa, and I'm mostly asked, and some don't add it, to add the Abdul Hamid. I'm told I cannot call you doctor now. What's the main problem? We also you defend thesis. Is that not the end of it?
Because graduation proper is in March.
Ah, okay. So doctor in waiting.
Absolutely.
Congratulations in advance.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, but I mean, I want to start our conversation from what's supposed to be. I mean, of course, we talk about President Akufo-Addo in office for 1 year. But let's start from what's currently happening. Not long ago, a statement came from the DVLA. First, the minister hinted, deputy minister of what they call it, yes, the deputy minister in that sector hinted that the controversy surrounding some first aid kits that was supposed to be adding 108 or so to the registration of cars has actually been suspended. I mean, put in proper context, this will not be the first time. I remember the towing levy, what they call it, one, and other things that public approach compel government to suspend. What went into this decision in the first place?
Well, good evening to the viewers. What it is that the reason, for example, you saw the press release was done by the board chairman of DVLA,
okay,
rather than the sector minister for transport. Are you following me? There's a significance to that point. So that tells you that the decision was taken purely by the agency without, so it was not a government decision.
Oh, okay.
You get the point? Because normally major government decisions are taken at cabinet and implemented or driven by sector ministers. Okay. So when you see that an agency, say the police service, Ghana Army, DVLA, all of those ones, graphic, GNA, whatever, if they issue statements, you know, or they embark on a policy, and then that policy meets with public disapproval. Okay. And then they are the ones that reverse it with their boards and so on. Then that tells you that it was at that level that these decisions were taken without recourse either to central government or to the sector minister. So we all woke up to the news on social media and even traditional media that if you went to the DVLA to renew your roadworthy certificate, that you were compelled to buy first aid kits at 108 Ghana cedis and so on. I mean, everybody was alarmed. As somebody who sits in cabinet, straight away what will come to my mind is, but where did it, I don't remember that this was discussed as any government decision. And indeed, when I found out from the Minister for Transport, he was as surprised as anybody else. And so we call the board chair for DVLA, and then they say, yeah, the man thought that this is the way to get people to open. We say, but we don't do things like that. Proper things have to be done.
By an authority, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes. It is an authority on its own. But, you know, when these things happen, straight away, the backlash is to central government. Yeah, I mean, it is today that I am making the distinction for you that certain agencies and organizations take decisions. And of course, I mean, I want to grant that it is not every single decision that perhaps they have to keep running to their minister. So there are certain decisions that they think, okay, this will further my administration of the agency that I preside over. But when they do and there's a backlash, then everybody is referring to central government, and I mean, some even insult the president and so on. That
they believe ultimate responsibility for the government and its actions lies in the hands of the president.
I agree. I agree. And so because of that, the Minister for Transport had to step in and say, but you can see the public outcry. Yeah. It is not correct. So you should do the needful. And so that is why I guess their board chairman then consulted with the chief executive and issued a statement and said the thing has been put on hold or suspended.
And the understanding we have is that because, and if you read the statement, they believe there isn't much education done on that. But not think the uproar is really because of education. People just do not think that government ought to buy them, or the DVLA ought to buy them first aid kits at that rate.
First of all, I mean, I agree with you, but it is also part of, you see, if they had attempted to embark on an education, then they would have even gotten, as they say in the street language, the vibes.
Oh, okay.
They would have gotten the negative vibes even before
and can react to
the implementation. Yeah, and then they will say, it's not going well. This is not something that the public is going to buy, and therefore we are not even going to implement at all. That is why for everything there are pilots.
Okay.
You know, so sometimes you pilot something in order to see what the reaction is. So, for example, they could have said, okay, for Tamale people, when you come to renew your roadworthy, this was going on. And Tamale people say, no. Then you know that it's not going to have nationwide acceptability. And then you put on hold on it. So I guess the education is part of it, or the lack of it was part of it.
Okay, but the understanding we are going to have going forward is, and for DVLA, they still have to go ahead and register cars. Yeah. They still have to go ahead and do their job normally. Some have raised concerns that when they introduce the new triangles, when they introduce the standard fire extinguishers, there was no brouhaha over that. Why do you think this one attracted this kind of reaction?
Well, I have had various arguments. One of the arguments is that the price at which they are selling it is exorbitant. The argument is that people just think that in a liberal market environment, it is inconsistent with our liberal market environment for people to be compelled to buy any product from only one source. I've heard that argument also, that people say, let the police enforce the use of first aid kits in cars, but let people get the first aid kits from where they may, provided that it meets certain specifications. So that is another argument that I've heard. So it's about the pricing, and it's also about the compulsion of acquisitions from a single source.
So who would take the decision to actually restart the entire process and get back on board, or abandon it entirely?
Where it is going, I'm not sure what the board will decide. Now that the board has issued a statement, I'm sure, of course, straight away the board is going to meet on it, and then they will then decide what they want to move going forward, taking into consideration the public sentiments that have come on the back of the policy. But my guess and my sense is that they may at best say that it is now optional, you know, for people to buy it from DVA. Not optional for people to have first aid kit. For having first aid kit in our cars, I guess it's in our own interest that we do.
Certainly.
Are you following me?
Yes, of course.
But I am sure that in respect to the decision to buy from a single or particular source, I guess that is not a policy that they would want to continue even after the announcement.
Mindful of the fact that central government get to be the recipient of the backlash most of the time, would it be more appropriate and prudent? Would it be your advice that these state institutions should revert to central government on such controversial policies prior to rolling them out there?
Oh, straight away. And that is a concern that I intend to raise with the Chief of Staff by tomorrow. That it is important that the Chief of Staff lets every agency head understand that even though they are agency head, in most cases, the law that establishes their agency makes them kind of semi-autonomous. Are you following me?
I get you.
Even so, that they recognize that at the end of the day, their actions have repercussions on the general Ghanaian population. And to the extent that the general Ghanaian population gave their mandate to central government, it is important that they recourse to central government anytime that they want to take decision that has public ramifications.
Okay, that's interesting to know. We will hope to see how the response will be and what will there be a policy guideline issued out there?
Of course, there has to be, in my view. Okay. But that's a suggestion that I'm going to make to the Chief of Staff.
That's interesting to know. There's another controversial issue, and of course, you are in the information ministry. That ministry, to some extent, superintend over the activities of, what's the name of the institution? Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. It's come on a lot of flack. When it actually got the Chief Justice to introduce on fresh courts, specific court to deal with people who refuse or fail to pay TV licenses. The backlash is big time on that particular one too. I mean, from the Ministry of Information's point of view, what's your stance on it?
Well, my stance is that we haven't even gotten there. We haven't gotten to a point.
To the creation of the courts or the use of the courts?
Even to the creation. Who is talking about creation yet? Even the whole understanding of why people should pay TV license. You've heard the arguments in the public space. People are not even sure whether TV license fees are paid in respect of the sets that people own or in respect of the content that they consume.
But to be fair, the MD or the Director General of GBC actually seem to have contradicted the law, which explains why it should be done by saying that you're paying for content.
Exactly.
And when people look at the content, they don't believe it's worth paying for.
Absolutely. And so that is why I pointed out to the Director General that he had not done, again to the issue of education, that he had not done enough education. That's number one. Number two, he hasn't put in place proper mechanisms for collecting these fees. You get the point? There are still many people in our society.
There's a, what do you call it, test code that you can actually pay through.
And all of that. But that's for the educated and so on. People who live, and nowadays there are many communities, many remote communities in our country that are connected to electricity. And that have television sets. People work in Accra and then they buy television sets for their grandmother, grandfather in, who knows, the remotest part of our country. Are you following me? Now that grandmother, grandfather, if he wants to send a grandchild to go and pay TV licenses in Krabeshe, is there a vending point in Krabeshe?
That's interesting to know.
Where the old lady can go and pay her fees, or she has to talk to her son in Accra to pay on her behalf, and if the son pays on her behalf,
how they credit?
And how does, if there was an inspector in Krabeshe who entered that household, how does the old lady prove that my son in the city? You know, there are so many issues in my view that need resolution and clarity about before we even then begin to even contemplate whether we even want to establish a court or not. And I pointed that out clearly to the Director General of GBC. But the point is that it is the National Media Commission that is responsible for GBC, not, you know, because of the nature of the 1992 Constitution. You know, the 1992 Constitution frowns on governmental control of so-called state-owned media. So the 1992 Constitution set up the National Media Commission to be the body that superintends over the state-owned media. So a Minister of State has no mandate directly to interfere. So I had to speak to NMC, speak to the boards and say, look, this is creating backlash for government. Because what I heard out there initially was not that GBC wants to put us in jail. It is government that wants to put us in jail.
Actually, so you expand the jail for them to go in
for all of them will go, okay, and in Tree, as some people were putting it. Okay, so we voted for them to put us in jail. Okay, let them lock them, all of us up. Because the power of prosecution is vested in the Attorney General. And so you cannot purport to be setting up courts to prosecute people without recourse to the Attorney General. The Attorney General's office didn't know anything about this matter. So first of all, yes, no, Attorney General didn't know, National Media Commission didn't know, GBC board didn't know, the Ministry of Information didn't know. The Director General of GBC on his own, at the blind side of everybody, writes to the Secretary of Judicial Service or whatever, and says that they should set up the court. In fact, it was the response of the Judicial Service Secretary to him, saying that in response to your letter mandating us to do this or requesting us to do this, we have set up these courts. That letter was then leaked into the public space. Otherwise, we wouldn't even know sitting here that any courts have been established. Are you following me?
But is that proper? I'm beginning to get worried about this kind of trend. Is it proper?
It is not. But that's the point I'm making to you, that the Director General of GBC knows the people who are responsible for him. He knows that he has a board. and he knows that there's the National Media Commission at least. And he knows also that the power of prosecution is in the Attorney General's office. So you cannot purport to be setting up structures to prosecute people when the prosecutor is not aware that he's supposed to prosecute him.
That's interesting to know. So what's the definite decision on this particular issue?
Well, the board of GBC and National Media Commission are meeting tomorrow, Friday, to deliberate on the matter. And then whatever their response is, they will put it out in the public space and we will know. But my sense from talking to both the NMC and the GBC is that they themselves are not excited that the Director General went ahead to do this. So I won't be surprised if they also issue a statement in the mode of the DVLA board saying that that whole matter should be disregarded.
Well, that's interesting to know. But okay, in the light of all of these happenings, I mean, maybe I will stay on this particular issue. Tomorrow is also the Friday that Parliament is being recorded. In fact, the claim of the minority is that government, in the office of the president, and you issued a statement to actually clarify that on the $100,000 it's been tagged, seats near the president scandal. They want a probe of sort. The claim is that they didn't do a good job. That's the office of the president. The probe did not meet the standards the minority feel it should have been, and that is why they are calling for this review. From what you've seen, from the details you know from all of this, did the office of the president do a thorough, independent, investigative review of the situation, which would have been in sync with any other scandal, and the results from there?
You know, the president was responding to a public, if you want, discussion, which related to his office.
Okay.
That his name was purportedly used, to raise money for a certain cause. Are you following me?
I get you.
Which some sections of the population found, if you want, opprobrious. And so he said to ask the Minister for Trade to come and give him the facts and tell him what it is that has generated that outcry. And so the Minister for Trade, and I put out his detailed explanation, gave the detailed explanation to the president. And so the president looked at the explanations and everything and thought that no wrongdoing was occasioned, and therefore asked the Minister for Trade to put it out in the public space. That's why I issued the first statement saying, look, the president has seen the facts. He doesn't believe that any wrongdoing has been occasioned. Even so, he has asked the Minister for Trade to put that explanation before the Ghanaian people, with the hope that the Ghanaian people themselves will come to the same conclusion and the same judgment that the president has come to.
If the president had referred it to a body like the CID, like any of those investigative bodies, would it not be more appropriate, and would not put to rest people thinking that in of himself, it wouldn't be the best of actions to say, I've reviewed it and I don't think you've done anything wrong?
There are circumstances that would occasion a president to make reference to the investigative bodies. And I'm sure...
yes, I've heard allegations against chief of staffs that were given to the CID. EOCO has been asked to investigate some of them. The BNI is doing some of these investigations.
Absolutely.
Exactly what is peculiar about this, that the president himself felt it was needful that he does the review?
Because this allegation was made in respect to his person.
Oh, okay.
That his office, or if you want...
the office of the president.
Yes, or that his seat. Because he went and sat as an invited guest at an occasion. Then later on, people allege that the people who were sitting around him at that table were not sitting there on any criteria except on the basis of the fact that they paid 100,000 United States dollars to sit with him. Are you following me?
I get you.
So it was about his name that was allegedly used in that respect. And so that is why he was concerned to protect the sanctity, or to be clear in his mind that the sanctity of his office was not violated, or that people did not use his office, if you want, as a pretext to raise money or whatever.
But even when the Ministry of what they call it, Trade, had written letters and insisted that the money should go through the account for a private entity, was the president not worried about that procedure?
No, that is not wrong in my view, because
it's a standard practice.
Yes, because the organization
for the ministry to take money for a private institution.
Hold. You see, people come to ministries to say that we want to collaborate with your ministry for a project, and government private sector collaborations are normal everywhere in the world.
I get you.
Okay, so the Millennium Excellence Awards Corporation says that we want to organize what they call Ghana Expatriate Business Awards. So give us an endorsement, okay, to be able to go out and raise funding for that, because we don't want the ministry to use its funds. Or of course, the ministry will not invest its funds in that matter.
I get you.
Now, once the ministry gives its accent, uses its letterheads, endorses to endorse a program, it is important that the ministry shows an interest in how that money raised is spent. You cannot just allow people to use your name to raise funds, and then you don't bother whether the funds are going to be used for the specific purposes for which they were intended. You ought to be concerned about it. I follow me.
I get you.
And so the purpose of saying that put the money in a designated account was for the ministry to be able to see that indeed they were using the money for the purposes for which they were meant.
And how is the ministry going to be able to probe that?
Oh, because say the ministry, once it is an account in which they also would be privy to how, when money is taken, the purpose for which the money is meant, and etc., then there will be a paper trail, a proper paper trail of how the monies that were deposited in the account is spent.
And this has been happening in government?
No, this is the first time in our government, but I'm saying that I would guess, I've never been in government before. This is my first time in government. I would be very worried if somebody was to tell me that under previous governments, people used the name of ministries to raise money, and the ministries didn't bother how the monies were spent. That would be very worrisome.
Okay, so there's nothing wrong with using the name of the ministry to raise money. Is that what you're saying?
At all. Once it's a project.
There's also nothing wrong with the ministry saying that we are offering our account, put the money in the account.
No, there's nothing wrong.
And there is nothing wrong, finally, if that's your opinion, with offering somebody a presidential seat.
With offering somebody a presidential seat. For money.
Yes.
Yes, for gain. That one is wrong. But no, but their allegations, they haven't been proven. Up to this day, the Ministry of Trade has said that if there is any one person who was charged $100,000 to sit by the president, let him come out and say it. To this day, nobody has said it. And we've also said...
But the Ministry of Trade is the one being accused together with the organizers.
Yes.
Why not an independent body probe these matters? Then we get to the bottom of it. Won't you think that would be more appropriate?
The point I'm making to you is simple, that, one, nobody has reported that they were charged said that they were charged $100,000 to sit by the president. Have you heard anybody come out to say so? No. Number two.
I'm told there are receipts. Are there no receipts?
Receipts
for the transaction.
Which
the
transaction?
100,000 payments.
And have you seen them?
I'm asking whether there are no receipts. I'm told there are.
No, the opposition is alleging that they have those evidences. And then we say, put it out in the public space. They're not putting it out.
Okay.
I mean, really,
so
that's worrying.
My final question on this one will be to find out from you. So are there any guidelines on how to deal with this matter going forward? Or because nothing was deemed to have gone wrong in the process, there are no guidelines on how to deal with subsequent matters related to the presidency?
I don't know about guidelines. It has nothing to do with it. It's the Ministry of Trade matter. But I'm sure that moving forward from what has happened, the Ministry of Trade, of course, I'm sure, would learn their lessons. And perhaps next time when people come to them to collaborate for a project, they will be able to do it in a way that will not elicit these kinds of accusations.
Do you believe when the organizers tell you that when they say presidential seat, they mean the president of the organizing body and not the president of the Republic of Ghana?
Who said what?
I'm saying that, do you believe when the organizers in their press conference tell everybody in this country that when they say people actually had to be given specialized presidential seat, that presidential seat meant sitting close to the president of the organizing body in this case and not president of the Republic of Ghana?
Because as far as the president of the Republic of Ghana is concerned, nobody was asked to pay any money to sit around him.
Okay.
That's all.
And because he determined so, that's why it's final.
Who determined
The
so?
president determined so.
Determined so.
That nobody was asked to do so.
From what was given him, yes, he has determined that no such thing happened.
Okay, forgive me, I have to take a break. When we're back after this break, it's actually 6:29. We'll continue our conversation. The crux of our conversation is President Akufo-Addo will be 1 year in 72 hours. And after the particular period, what's happening to government in the year 2018? The information minister is my guest. Welcome back to UPfront. We're having a conversation with the Information Minister in the People's Republic of Ghana. And we've been starting our conversation on what's happening in the country currently. And we just bypassed the, not necessarily, we just bypassed the review part because we'll get back to it later on to now take a sneak peek of what's going to happen tomorrow on the 100,000 probe the minorities demanded of this particular government. Honorable, you're welcome.
Thank you.
On that note, that's where we actually went for the break. Do you think it will be much ado about nothing for this probe to happen tomorrow, mindful of the financial burden many have spoken about in this case?
Well, I think that it's a political strategy. It has nothing to do with unearthing anything. Do you know that there's nothing to be unearthed? You watch it. You see, it's politics 101 that if you that repeat the lie often and then it becomes the truth. That's Gobelian politics 101. Every novice in politics knows that rule. I follow you.
I get you.
Or even if you want that maxim. So, okay, let's pull it as much as we can and then continue to gain political mileage from it as long as it takes. That's all they are seeking to do. But believe me, I believe that the Ghanaian mind is more sophisticated than the Gobelian mind. And I believe that people will be able to sift the chaff from the grain.
For you, would it be a waste of the money?
Well, I've heard the opposition people say that for this one, they are prepared.
They are willing to let go.
To let go. So once I don't have the evidence yet that
they'll be paid something
to spend money on it. And
but is government willing to spend money on it?
I'm unable to say.
Is government willing to spend money on it?
The Minister for Finance will best answer that.
Okay, that's interesting to know. Okay, let me not take you away from this because one other issue that's happened in the course of the week that's interesting. Notice the president actually assented to the bill, other bills too, but to many special prosecutors is big time. Who is going to be the special prosecutor?
Well, I don't know until the president has told me to tell the Ghanaian people that he has appointed so and so.
Is it Mr. Akufo-Addo?
I don't know, quite frankly.
Is he being shortlisted?
I don't know.
But you are a cabinet minister. You are very close to the ears of the president. At least give a leeway. So what stage is the selection process now?
I don't know what is in the president's mind.
No, I'm talking about the selection process. What stage is it now?
Is there a selection process? When it comes
there's going to be just an appointment.
Yes, the president.
I thought the idea was that the attorney general will actually make some suggestions, then the president makes a final determination.
Really? Yes. I don't know, quite frankly. I don't know the criterion, anything. But I guess is a position that the president makes the appointment. So the president determines who he wants and so on. I don't know. I don't know what it is that the president is going to do.
Before Christmas, the NCA case went to court. And that was, to be clear, the first prosecution of the issues that happened that many have spoken about in the course of the year. Do we expect more prosecutions this year?
Oh, we are in 2018 and this is January. So, of course,
which one's up next?
A long way to go.
Which one?
That one too.
The people are listening to you. They just want to know. You just give an inclination.
No, all I know is that on the 9th of January, the NCA case will be heard again.
Oh, but wait, that one, we told the people we were in court.
Exactly.
No, so but I'm talking about any other case that's going to go to court soon.
I don't know.
Not the Standards Authority one.
I don't know.
Not COCOBOD.
I don't know.
What's the status of the review of the COCOBOD case by the Attorney General's Department?
Well, as specific in regards to specific cases and so on and so forth, you know, like
of course, you're not in the ministry, so
yes,
but I thought maybe there's something fresh that you could give us on this particular level.
Frankly, there's nothing new that.
Okay, now let's bust the wide open. It was a very interesting year. The government started this work, and President Akufo-Addo has been in office for 1 whole year. I mean, it might be a bit awkward to ask you to assess the president, but how's the government been doing?
Well, we are very proud of our record thus far and what we have achieved and what we have sought to achieve for the Ghanaian people per the mandate that was given us by the Ghanaian people, per the manifesto that we sold to the Ghanaian people. And so I think that we've done, in my view, very well. Okay,
that's interesting. One district, one factory. In August, when the president actually cast out for the Kumfi pineapple factory, he stated that 51 districts were going to see the start of the implementation of these enterprises by the end of the year. The year ended without that happening. Are we going to get that happening soon?
Well, as we speak with you, about 191 proposals have been accepted for districts, about 102 districts across the country, you know, for the establishment of these factories in 102 districts. The thing about one district, one factory is that it is not entirely a government initiative.
It's a collaboration.
I'm sure now that's very clear to everybody. And you know, banks like UNB have even set up incubation centers for this particular project and so on. And so it will also depend to a large extent. For government, we do our budgetary allocation and then we decide, for example, in 2018, that 2 million Ghana cedis or 3 million Ghana cedis is what our counterpart funding for the project should be. The rest of it has to be funded by the private sector, by the banks, and etc., etc. So there are various processes that have gone on. But as we speak, many of them are ready for the funding and for the rollout. So I'm sure in the course of the year, we'll see many of them spring up.
In the first quarter, are we likely to see some of them?
I'm sure.
But you don't have the breakdown?
No.
Right? Okay, but how about the 1 million per constituency? Is one thing that also did not happen. Of course, we were told that because the development authorities were not ready. Now they are ready, and you know the ministry is a very controversial one. You've had cause to issue a statement in defense of the particular ministry. When are we going to see this project roll out the way it ought to be done?
Well, as for one district, $1 million per constituency. Yes. First of all, like we've been saying, the needs assessments have been done for all of the 275 constituencies. The bill has now been accented and has become law. And therefore, the next stage, and I'm sure in the very next few weeks, the president will make the appointments of the people to run these authorities. And once the people are in place, the authorities are in place, their boards are in place, straight away, the implementation and execution of projects in those constituencies begin. Because as for the money, it's been budgeted for in the 2018 budget. So what is left is for the establishment of the authorities and their boards and for work to commence.
Our poll at my online, which was actually people's voting on who they considered ministers that ought to go, has it come to the attention of the president? That, for example, the Minister for the Special Development Initiative, the big project which is spearheading this particular one, many things should not stay in office because of what happened with the budget in the last year.
You know, precedents, almost like, if you want, a judge who presides over a case. Oftentimes, or indeed, a judge does not listen to the public prosecutions of case in order to influence their own judgment. That wouldn't be correct. The president has a team of ministers that he works with. And he appointed these ministers based on his understanding of their competences.
Okay.
Are you following me? And then beyond that, has a monitoring mechanism for determining which minister is performing to his expectation, or which minister is not performing to his expectation. And so, yes, you as a media house, you have the right.
We ask the people to vote. They didn't vote.
I know. I'm saying you have the right to conduct.
The good people of this country, to whom there is sovereign power, which they give to the president to act for and on their behalf.
Yes.
Are the ones who voted in this case.
Yeah, those who have access to internet, are well educated.
Simmering it down.
Oh, but that's what is happening.
Okay, I get you. Okay,
that's the truth of the matter.
I get you.
Yeah, you did a poll amongst internet users, amongst people who visit Joy FM sites, and among people who are sufficiently literate to be able to decipher these things. So if you say that amongst this class of Ghanaians, this is the view, I wouldn't tell. It's quite an important view.
I get you.
By saying that, I don't denigrate the view at all. But it is important for us to consider the views of so many other publics as well. That's why in public relations, we don't talk about public, we talk about publics.
Okay.
You have done a poll among one public. So it will be important for the president to consider what is the general view of all the other publics put together to be able to make a conclusion on the matter. Otherwise, the president, or every president for that matter, should be sensitive to public opinion and to the views of the various publics that constitute our society.
Should we expect a reshuffle?
I haven't been told by the president that I should announce a reshuffle, so I don't know.
No, I mean, I'm saying that mindful of what's happening within government today, mindful of the engagements, the reviews that are happening, should we expect a reshuffle?
I don't think so. My sense is that the president is very satisfied so far with the performance of every single minister of his.
The 110?
Yes.
All of them?
No, I mean the 36 ministers, those who are responsible for running
the main minister.
Yes, for running the ministry. He's very satisfied. He is, without a doubt.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, I mean, 2017 also had some other issues coming up, issues about vigilantism. In 2018, so far there's not been any reference to that in the stories. Is there a government-wide plan to deal with the problem?
Well, of course, there has to be. there has to be.
What's
now,
the plan?
But you see, these things happen, if you have noticed, only in transitions, at the beginning of transition periods.
But it seems to have extended beyond that here.
No. This thing
so what
happened
by
in the early, when a party changes.
I get you.
When the government changes. Okay, so that's why you found it in 2001, you found it in 2009.
Certainly, the year. And by that, it didn't mean just a few weeks, but the entire year. Because in this particular case, as of even August, there were still reports of these, what they call it, confrontations due to possible takeovers. And these
like which
actions, one? The one in the Brown Alpha region, specifically the NADMO office, where the place was locked up by the grouping called Delta Force in this case.
Delta Force in Brown Alpha?
The invisible forces, yes, rather.
In Brown Alpha?
Yes, that's what they said they were.
You see, sometimes people also take advantage of a certain situation to engage in acts that perhaps would put other people in bad light. You know, the Dagomba people have a saying that which means basically that the mouse basically has a bad name. You know, when everything is stolen from the race, the mouse must have.
Oh, so people were doing things and blaming these.
Of course, there was some clear case like that in Techimai, for example. Also had to do with either non-formal or something where people who had sympathies to other parties who were intentionally locked up the place.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just to act up, but they were exposed for who they were. So the point I'm making to you is that it's important for us to be very careful not to say that any act of locking up an office or something is necessarily instigated by an invincible force. No, sometimes they are very visible forces too. It's not all the time that they are invincible.
That's interesting to know. You're not in the education ministry, but when is this particular voluntary contribution fund going to be operational? Remember that.
Well, the minister for finance, mentioned it
in the
budget.
Yeah.
But he said that in the course of time, he would announce modalities for its implementation and role. It's not a matter that has come before the cabinet yet. And so when it does come, we would let you know. What's happening with the National Identification Authority's quest to, as of November 20, register Ghanaians? Well, the indication that I get from the National Identification Authority is that in this first part of the year, the rollout would begin. Indeed, they say that they are all about ready to roll out. But I am unable to say whether it is going to be tomorrow or tomorrow next. But I'm sure in the next month or so, we should be able to roll out. The SNET, there was some form of a probe ongoing there. What's the status of this probe? IOCO was doing one. PwC was supposed to also work on a report. I mean, some scandalous 72 or so million Ghana cedis was actually paid and are still being paid on some form of automation exercise, which is not fully functioning. What's the status of that particular engagement? You know, I told you earlier on in this interview that when it comes to isolating specific cases of alleged corruption, you know, I'm unable to go case by case because these are cases anyway, that are all being investigated or by the investigative authorities, CID, some are IOCO, and etc., etc. So if we were to do a program specifically on a case-by-case discussion of each particular case, then I would be able to come here with a dossier and then we will discuss that. But quite frankly, I just know that many of them are at various stages of investigation. And the Attorney General has to satisfy herself that the investigation that has come before her is thorough and that it will stand scrutiny in a court of law before she can proceed to court. Okay, I just wanted to know if they are finished with the report on that. That's all, if possible. I'm not so sure. Okay, but finally, and maybe on the process of what's happening in the year 2017 that probably did not get completion, government promised to stay on statutory obligations like NHIS, this Assembly's Common Fund, gov't Fund, and also SNET. Did the government deliver in the 2017 all of this on timelines? In 2017, what I know is that when we came in, the National Health Insurance in particular was hugely indebted to service providers. I've forgotten the figure. We've cleared quite a substantial, I think it was a little over $1 billion. Yes, or something like that. Yes. It was actually more than 2 billion. 1.2 billion we were told was cleared. As of the time the health minister spoke about this matter. Exactly. Yes. So what I know is that the National Health Insurance in particular is one of the, if you want, social interventions programs that this president is very determined should work. Okay. Are you following me? And that's why he said that he appointed an accountant rather than a doctor, a medical doctor, as Minister for Health, because he believes that what is at the heart of the it is about the money and the arrangements that have to do with finances and so on. And so I believe, in my view, per the way that we have performed in respect of the paying of the debt of the NHIA, in order to free it to be able to perform, that we've done marvelous. As of the time the finance minister was delivering the budget, he stated that, and that's page 177, that we promised to restore teacher training allowances and we are on course to deliver. Exactly what does that mean? Paid or not paid? Oh, teacher training allowances have been paid. They are restored. Nursing trainings have also been restored. You know, those restorations have all been done. When will this 100,000 National Builders Fund project start? You see, in 2018, yes. Let me tell you something. You are going to be seeing a lot of ground movement, okay, in terms of the real projects on the ground that will move our transformation and change agenda forward. You are going to be seeing, for example, in the railway sector, today the trains have reached Takwa. You know, the minister for railways, normally when I see him, I say to him, the trains must move. He will say, the trains must move. Now, when I see him, I say, the trains must move. He says, the trains have moved. Okay. Actually, the same trains? Yes, the trains have moved ones we had? At least to Takwa. Okay. Okay. Now, he's done a lot of the PPP arrangements have been done, with this memoranda have been signed and so on. So in 2018, we expect to see what I call real digging, you know, digging the ground in order to extend the railways as much as we ought to extend them.
What's the level of government's engagement with inventor Dr. Thomas Mercer, who is promised, among other things, to help the states build bullet trains, high-speed trains from the south to the north of the country at a very fast rate, at a very cheap rate too, compared to what could have been done with all the extensions we want to do as a state, and also helping us set up Silicon Valley, which we tried to do in 2012, which did not happen. What's the state of engagement with the inventor?
Well, the Minister for Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, Professor Frimpong Boateng, has told me, in fact, this was even as recent as yesterday in the evening, that he's had a sitting with Dr. Thomas Mercer. They've had discussions, and then they will continue to talk. So whatever ideas he has and so on, the minister, who is a colleague scientist, is ready to take them on board for shaping the national science and development agenda. So once the minister is engaging with him, that shows that, I mean, the preparedness of the government to engage him on whatever ideas he has for us to move on.
What's happening on the 7th of this month, Sunday?
Sunday, the Fourth Republic will be 25 years. And this is the longest...
Okay, I get you, but I also know that that's the first year anniversary of President Akufo-Addo. Yes. And when I was asking, that's actually what I was referencing. Or the two will be fused.
Oh, the President Akufo-Addo, like he promised in July last year, says that he will hold press engagements, press conferences every 6 months, like half-year mark and a year mark, to mark his year in office. So that will happen somewhere next week. Tentatively, we fixed it for next week, Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
You know, for the president to hold an encounter with the media to mark his 1 year in office. That will be done.
Okay, that
is just going to be a press engagement.
I get you.
But on Sunday, the Republic, the Ghanaian Republic, Fourth Republic, will be 25 years old. And that is going to be marked by an interfaith service at the Independence Square, where all the political parties will be present. All the past leaders of our Fourth Republic, President Kufuor, President Rawlings, President Mahama, and the current president will all be there.
They've all committed to attend.
Yes. In fact, today, yes, on Sunday. In fact, today there was a meeting with the president of all political parties.
I'm told that meeting happened.
It happened.
I'll be asking you about that particular meeting.
Yes.
But this program that's supposed to be happening on Sunday,
yes,
the significance is to mark our 25th anniversary.
Absolutely. Because it's important. We tried a First Republic, it got truncated in 6 years. We tried a Second Republic, 27 months, it failed. We tried a Third Republic, it failed in 28 years. So if we have tried a Fourth Republic that has endured 25 years, I believe that it's something that we need to come together as political actors, as a nation, and hold hands and thank God that we are one nation, one people with one destiny, and make a resolution that we will let this republic endure even another 25 years and beyond. So that is an important occasion that I think is worth marking.
And all of the political parties are bought into the idea.
They have. Today there was the discussion, like I told you, at the Flagstaff House with the president. NDC was represented by Esiedun Ketia, Bernard Mona of PNC, Dr. Dele, CPP, etc. And they all were in agreement that it is an important milestone in our national life that we need to mark. So there's unanimity on that matter. I mean, and I'm excited that for the first time
we have agreed on.
Yeah, we have agreed. So it's not a controversial matter at all. Everybody accepts.
Is that the only thing you're doing to commemorate such a day?
Yes, it's just that.
Shouldn't we look back at the last 25 years and ask ourselves, has country Ghana gone the way it's supposed to go? I do recall when Dr. Kwesi Amoako of the Africa Center for Economic Transformation said, democracy has not necessarily yielded the fruits we want to see in our part of the world, and specifically in Ghana, especially if compared to countries like Rwanda and other countries. Shouldn't we have a forum to deal with that? Shouldn't we have ways of making sure that we take cognizance of how far we come and move forward with consistent ways to make sure we develop perhaps beyond aid?
First of all, the discussion that we are having on this set today, okay, is a product of the 25 years of democracy. They didn't used to be this blossoming of
freedom of the media.
Absolutely, and so on. It is the 25 years democracy that now allows us to speak the way that we are able to speak. There was a period, and I was grown enough to see, when we were sleeping at 6 p.m. every day for over 1 year in this country. So we've gone past all of that. So, and secondly, there is research to show that. Recently, there was a professor called Dr. Austin Gareth, who came, I think, from the University of Oxford, delivered a lecture at the IEA, and showed, in fact, before him, Professor Larry Diamonds, all of them have shown research that Ghana has grown the most in this period of 25 years of the Fourth Republic than any other period in our history. We've had the more growth in the middle class in our country. Incomes have gone high and so on. So it is not true to say that we haven't really achieved much under this democracy. That is not true. The facts do not speak to that language.
What are the elements of democracy that a country after 25 years ought to see?
Well, basically everything boils down to incomes, to standards of living. You know, there's this professor called Professor Richie Caldes.
Yes, and by that, the WHO, the World Bank, all judge that by HDI performance.
Exactly, and say, you know, but I wanted to quote this professor who said that democracy is a word which grumbles meaninglessly in empty stomachs.
Oh, that's interesting. Of course, I mean,
if people
democratic on an empty stomach.
Absolutely. If people are hungry,
there's still a population in this republic that are still poor, underprivileged, that are still being deprived active political participation.
Exactly.
So it's
not.
So we're not there yet.
So exactly. That's the point I was about to make.
Okay.
That to the extent that there are still many people who are below, you know, if you want, at the lower sides of the poverty bracket. I think that we have a lot to do. And of course, we acknowledge, even as a government, that, for example, even the unemployment situation in our country is something that we have. You asked me about the Marshall Plan and the Builders Corps and so on, because these are all programs that we have put in place in 2018 to ensure that we can mop up as many. Under the National Builders Corps, we are proposing to employ at least 400 graduates from every district, from each district of our country. And I believe that once that program kicks off, that will be an important absorption of a large chunk of the graduate unemployed people. So we are still,
I guess your point. How much are we spending on Sunday's event?
The committee is still working. Sunday is still far.
Oh, so today is Thursday.
Yeah.
Sunday, actually tomorrow is the last working day of the week.
Yes.
We should know how much we are spending on that.
Well, I don't know.
Did we make a budgetary provision for that?
There has to be.
Which office is catering for that?
It's the office of the president.
Oh, okay. So it's part of the budget for the office of the president.
Yes.
But I don't know the exact amount in this case.
No.
When will we be told the exact amount?
When we have done with the event, and then we know how much was involved, we'll let the people know.
The Honorable Information Minister, I thank you so much for joining us today. We should be doing this more often.
I hear you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, folks, that's where we tie the nice ribbons on today's edition of UPfront. Thanks so much for joining us.